Okay, in this video, I want to go through some large caps with you live. I haven't really gone through them in a while, so the charts may need some resetting. Speaking of which, I've reset some of my general market charts insofar as I just removed all the drawings and redid them just to be a bit more precise. Also, I'm using slightly thinner white lines just to be more precise. The fat ones can maybe give off the wrong impression technically. So these are just thinner white lines. I think they should still be clear. Anyway, general recap of my thesis is that I'm fundamentally bearish. I think we will eventually go lower, test the lows, and ultimately break the lows. That's what I think is going to happen. We are not short-term technically bearish, so we may have some sideways action. Just looking at the SPY, I do think we could bounce a little bit, test this ascending, and go lower. The Nasdaq, I'm just going to go through the Nasdaq and the S&P because I'm going to go through the large caps, and these are the general market indices that influence them. So here, likewise, a small bounce. We tried to put a bit of a bottom here, double bottom, testing old resistance as support. I don't think we're going to crack the upper resistance. So yeah, a small move up and then roll over. That's what I expect. So having said all that, let me move all the way back down to check the large caps. So I'm starting with Intel, and I think I removed all the drawings here. So this is notoriously bearish. I mean, this used to be maybe the bellwether for semiconductors, but now it's just, I mean, look at the chart, despite the massive bounce in the markets, this is pretty weak. So I don't think there's much point in adding resistance here. You can see very credible, very long term, hits it twice. So I would expect if there was ever a move up in Intel, let's say we took out this sort of zone of resistance, I think that's pretty notable resistance. If you moved up, and it would probably take several days for such action, even if there was earnings, which I don't think there is. For example, there's Nvidia earnings, maybe that would influence it. I doubt it. Maybe some sympathy play, but let's say after several days it was to go up, this would be resistance. It would hit not only the long-term descending line, which will definitely be resistance, but you can also see here, this zone here, for me, this is where it broke down from. So something like this would be like double resistance. So for me, if anyone's holding, and this is not perfectly straight, but if anyone was holding Intel, I would say, look at that zone as a sell point. And, from where we are here, that would be a nice move. But still, I actually expect Intel to not take out the first resistance. And to be honest, it'll probably flush this pretty soon. Imagine it just rolls over here. Straight away, it's lost ascending. It will straight away test its absolute low here and flush that, because the trend is your friend. The trend is down. And then really be a question of looking what's next. You even have to go to the weekly chart. And if the market's going down, then this could really hit lows. I think this area would be one area of support. Again, you'd probably have to judge the market, what the market's doing, and then the absolute low. And to be honest, I would buy this definitely if it was down here. You just leave this in your portfolio and go on holiday for 2 years and then come back. So for me, that's Intel. I haven't looked at this chart actually, so I kind of did that spontaneously. That's my thoughts on Intel. Very bearish. I do like to buy broken down good stocks, but this one I can just see go lower, especially if the market starts to roll over. Google, obviously a very, very good stock, or rather a good company lately, not the best stock. Resistance on the way down, you can see that that's pretty credible. It's also, it looks a bit like Intel, doesn't it? This sort of ascending support could be lost soon. I mean, I think this is because the ChatGPT sort of AI failure that it released. It sort of almost looks like it released its version in a bit of a hurried way, and it failed at some basic questions. So, and that will be the future. I think all this AI stuff, it may even replace search engines, and so it makes sense that it took a bit of a beating. But I'm not into the news at the moment. Google is a good stock. It's just really well established, irreplaceable in some cases. I mean, when was the last time you didn't use Google search? And also, it's basically owned by the government. I mean, it's owned by the NSA, NRO, my opinion. So it's not going to be allowed to go bankrupt. It always wins government contracts. Here we're looking at some absolute lows in case it flushes like Intel. It'll probably hit some support before then, though. This is the March lows of 2020. That's incredible. I mean, for me, the market rolls over, Google straight away hits its ascending support. It then tests it lows. It'll probably bounce from there. I'll probably buy it here because it's just come down a lot by then, and it's a very well established company. 45%, that's quite a lot. But if we were to flush lower, I would say this zone, this sort of zone here between 70 and 68 is the same thing, isn't it, really? I'll just say 70 because it's a good stock, so you don't want to miss it just by 2 points for being greedy. And then if we were to lose 70, we're probably not going to go to 68 and bounce. We'll probably go lower. And to be honest, I'll leave the March 2020 low in. Just do that. So that's my thoughts on Google. And I'm really looking at the downside because that's where I believe we're going to go. The upside target, well, first one will be this resistance. Next one will be the recent high here. And can it take that out? And if it can, then a lot of people will jump in and probably move it all the way up to this zone here. Although I doubt it'll get there because that would really require a massive market move up. And by then you're talking about the Dow Jones at new highs, which makes no sense. Although the FTSE, the CAC 40 and the DAX, the European markets are basically at their all-time highs. So I wouldn't put it past the markets. Here, I'm going to remove all my old drawings. Microsft, it's not the weakest stock out there, but it's not the strongest either. So this one also, long-term resistance is still in play. I think it's already taken a bit of a hit there because of long-term resistance. Coming back down, instantly put the lows in. This is the low, but this also is also the low. So I'm going to put the 220 low. If it loses 220, it'll probably go to new lows. So where I also believe this will go towards the downside if the Nasdaq starts to come down. So hit ascending support, bounce off that, lose that, and then basically test the all-time lows. I might as well add this one because it will count. And on the way, well, let's just do on the way up. On the way up, it'll be first its old high, so over here. Then its next high over here. You can see it counts there several times with the gap. And then I'm going to leave it there. I don't want to start adding this one here. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I don't think we'll get there. On the way down, if this loses, I mean, look at the March 2020 low. That's so far away. It's incredible how much of a move up all these stocks did, the tech stocks especially. And talk about a bubble, a lot of stocks are actually way below their March 2020 low. So imagine how much downside Microsoft has. I wouldn't be buying this because I think it's way too overbought. I think it'll come down by quite a bit. AMD, and there are other stocks, to be honest, that have come down a lot more. So let's remove all the old drawings. So AMD, another chip company. Let me look at this one. See, there's no point in drawing this because it's totally broken out a long time ago. I mean, it's obsolete as of a long time ago. So here, for example, it broke out of it. And then the only time it's worth keeping it in is if it hasn't tested it again. So here, for example, it broke out, tested again, and then it's totally null and void because it broke all the way down. And now this is irrelevant. So sometimes I've forgotten to remove old trend lines, but this one is totally useless. So then you draw the next one. And the next one, for example, would have been this one, because this one would have been relevant after the breakdown. And you can see it broke out of it here. And actually, it hasn't touched it yet. So you could leave this one in, because it could touch it, go sideways and break out, and then or move back up, and then it's then it'd be null and void. So if it hits this, it becomes after hitting it, it'll become obsolete because either it keeps going down or it goes back up, and by now it's already hit it. So I'm going to leave this one in. Let me see some other. It doesn't really count because of that. I think the ascending doesn't really count as much. If this does break out, let's say Nvidia goes up on, was it Wednesday earnings or something, then we could move higher, at which point the last high will count. So I'll just leave this one in. I do believe AMD will come all the way back down again with the markets. And then, well, it won't go all the way back down to its lows. It'll probably, Interesting. I'm not sure. I'm gonna actually put this horizontal line in two, just the second last low. It may actually hit this descending line and find a little support there. And then if it does go lower, then yeah, probably test this low here. I'm gonna leave that in. I prefer to miss a line than to put one that doesn't count, because then it just becomes noisy and the chart isn't that readable. So I think that'll do for AMD, keeping it simple. Alibaba. Yes, this one I bought all the way down somewhere here. I forgot where. I sold it at 88, if I remember, way too early. I sold quite a few early, but I caught the bounce, nice 10 or 20% move at least. And I remember a lot of people chasing it all the way up here, and down we go. So Alibaba, well, let's start with the obvious one, all-time low. I'm not sure if we're going to break the all-time low, because the Chinese stocks, and this is the Amazon of China, you know, and I think he's made peace, or the Chinese government has stopped sort of targeting Jack Ma a bit. So maybe the bottom is in. Famous last words, but maybe I'll just put the horizontal trend line. I sort of want to cover general areas here. So, you know, sort of this channel, I think that's the high, that's the low. And then the descending line, my favorite one, doesn't count because this would have been obsolete a while ago. There is no descending channel, descending line, you know, I mean, it's completely obsolete already. So there is possibly an ascending line here, but you can see that's obsolete and it didn't even work there. So for me, the next I would add, because you know it's not just going to come all the way back down here. I would say this zone here, you can see it hit its head there, hit its head there, and found support. There's no, I mean, I could just do that to make it clearer why I don't always go further back, because sometimes it interferes. But there, I think, you know, that'll do actually for Alibaba, just that simple zone. There's also, you could say this zone here, and I may just do that anyway. It's a bit of a gap fill, so gaps tend to get filled and bounce on the gap fill. And you could be extra cute and put one there. You can see it hit there too. I'll do it. Why not? Since I'm right here. I mean, that for me, there is no ascending or descending. It's quite rare that that's the case. So there's just horizontal lines. I think that's pretty accurate. On the way up, actually, because it is possible that Alibaba hits this and goes higher. You could say this is a zone, then that one, then that one. This one I would machine gun my way out of. So let's say I had 100 shares, right? That's $10,000 worth. I would sell, first of all, I'd sell this. I'd sell 10, just 10 shares straight away, whatever, out. If it goes back down, I can play with that 10 shares again, but it'll probably go up because this will hit by the time it goes all the way up here, it will have hit it 4 times. And yeah, I still think the Chinese market is totally oversold versus the US markets and especially the European markets. So it would go up here, sell 10 just for fun, keeps going. Then I'd sell here 140. It'll probably go higher, but another 10. Then I would start maybe getting a bit more serious with the sells. Maybe sell 20 here, 20 there, 20 there. And by then you're sort of 3/4 out. And then the rest you just, I don't know, maybe the markets are topping out, or yeah, you just sell the rest whenever you think. But I think by then that would be a great swing trade. So let me just add one more because I think it would possibly go higher. I would just do the gap fill. It's my last one. Well, I'd probably sell this zone here. But anyway, I just don't want to draw too many lines because when I'm zoomed out, it hurts my eyes almost. But for me, Alibaba, it's just horizontal lines. You could maybe draw a descending one here. Last one. Maybe. Could maybe draw that. Okay, that's Alibaba, Netflix, and these are in no particular order. They used to be in order of the ones I'm more likely to buy, but it's probably by Google first. Intel is probably more oversold, but you know, less attractive than Google, let's say at the moment. Netflix, let me remove all drawings. You can see my old fat lines there. I think you can still see the ones I'm drawing now. They can be more accurate instead of covering a wider zone. So I will actually draw that one. I think that's correct. So we have an ascending line. Okay, we have resistance, the old high, which kind of coincides with this, but let's just use the latest high. Just like the Nasdaq, I think it would fail, like the Nasdaq, come back down, hit the ascending. I don't see any obvious horizontal line. This one doesn't count for me because, I mean, look at the last time it was there, it chopped higher, just it didn't act as resistance. So I think it would come back down, hit ascending, which may coincide with these two here. So this is really, really ultra short term, zoomed in sort of support. And if I think it will hit this ascending and bounce a bit, and let's see what the market does. But if it does go lower, then honestly, it goes low with a bit of a vengeance. I think it will actually go and test sort of this zone. You can see we hit our head here, hit support there, there. So for me, this sort of line would also be a very light line on the sand before ultimately hitting its all-time lows. For me, Netflix would be a good buy, actually. I'm not into all these streaming companies. I think when you're in a depression, this is the first kind of this is the first kind of business that goes. I mean, you can find these things online. YouTube has movies, you can stream things, you can easily find streams. So why pay all this money for Netflix when you're finding a hard time getting apples and bread on the table, So not the best defensive stock when you're in a depression. That'll do for Netflix if maybe on the upside, because let's be fair, it is possible to break out. I don't think we'll hit our head here. I think we would, well, yeah, this will really be resistance. But I mean, if it gets here, anyway, let's draw that. I wouldn't put it past either. Obviously, the next one would be the gap fill here. Let's just draw it because I'm attracted to it, but I really doubt it. Apple, yeah, very, very strong. It's probably the strongest stock overall. So first of all, this one. So if we do go higher, this reminds me of Tesla before the drop, actually. Let me just look at Tesla for some reason. You see this? And I remember saying, get out here. Actually, let me remove all these drawings just to make it clear. You see this part here? It also had a nice, obvious descending. And you see this little, I remember when it hit this part, I was just thinking, why? It's whilst the whole market was going down. And let's look at Apple. It's kind of similar all the way up, finding resistance just before hitting the descending. So let's just draw it in. For me, very, very clear resistance. Let's just do the resistance because it's actually quite close to it. Let's say it pops up. I think this would be resistance because I think you'll find a lot of resistance when near the highs. I mean, I think they'll have more sellers than buyers, hence how a top is put in. So for me, you'd find resistance there and obviously there. I mean, yeah, then there, then there, then there. I'm not going to draw those. I refuse to. But if we go back down, let's just draw the very obvious support, the all-time low of the bear market. Obviously, we won't be going there and finding support. We'll be finding support elsewhere. When it's very, very steep, I don't think there's much point in putting the ascending support in. I mean, you'd really have to zoom in maybe on the 15-minute chart, and there you could see if it really makes sense or not. So you can see it's kind of held. But any drop, if I was to leave this in, any drop, let's say on Tuesday, because Monday the market's closed, you're instantly below this ascending support. And then you're giving yourself the false impression that, oh, we've lost support, we're going much lower. It might just go here and bounce. And then immediately this ascending support is null and void. So I actually prefer not to have ascending support when it's very, very at a very steep angle. So for me, if it was to lose this, okay, the old zone here might count very, very temporarily. This one here, this one here. Let me go back to the daily because I think you'd have to really judge on the daily. Sure, I mean, you could say this. I'm sure Apple will find support on the way down, but I don't want to overdo it. So this zone is it's a bit clearer. I'm just going to leave that because you'd really have to judge Apple on the general market. Nvidia, the ascending is null and void. I'll draw the ascending, the old high. Look at that, that's beautiful. If it goes higher, now we do have earnings come out. I really doubt we get there. I'm not drawing anything higher than that. And to be honest, to get there is asking quite a lot. I mean, just from where we are, 35%, that's no way. To be honest, you'd probably find resistance before. I wouldn't normally do this, but just because it's impossible to get up there, I think maybe this little gap area would be the resistance on the way up. On the way down, this is prior resistance, isn't it? So since it's so clear to me, I think this is a bit of a zone. Hit its head again, comes back down, tests it once on the way down, something like that. I think I would leave it there. It hits this. I mean, let's say it's bad earnings. It just maybe goes below that. How much of a move would that be? 10%. It could do that. You could even have the market down before earnings and then bam, right on ascending support. If we lose ascending, the last horizontal lines and then the all-time low. For me, those are the basics to Nvidia technically. I'm not going to go into RSIs, Fibonacci's and all that. With experience, yeah, sometimes it really does help, but generally no. And when you're watching loads of stocks, the market's volatile, bear market, don't overdo it. Remove all drawings, Disney, one of the weaker ones. I don't see an obvious descending line. I mean, except this one here, but it probably never come into play, maybe on the upside. It's another descending line short term. I'm not going to draw that one, am I? Sorry, I'm really doing this live. I just think it's more transparent to see how I think about it. This one, no, even this one here, probably not. You know what? No. And why would I say no? Because once you break out of this, you're going to go hit this soon, which will coincide with this high here. So for me, it's kind of the same thing. And there'd be just too many lines. So I would say this zone, I would say the last high, obviously, that's the first line to take out. And on the downside, and this is more likely to fall down, actually, I can imagine, imagine the Nasdaq just rolling over. This would come down very quickly. This would be very short-term support, probably for one day, but straight to the lows. And then, to be honest, I have to zoom out because this zone here kind of coincides with this March 2020 low. Wow, this is one of the stocks that's basically at its March 2020 lows very quickly. And then after that, I mean, you'd have to take the weekly chart. Yeah, it's probably going to start hitting very old resistance. But it'll probably find support on the way. So for example, I have to get pretty precise here. Maybe this zone, it hit its head several times, tested it once and never came back. Then the bottom of that range, then this zone here, then there. Although this one wouldn't count because it's basically testing this massive line. So I don't know, I'll add one of them in, sort of this one. It's not my favorite stock, Disney, a bit like Netflix. It's not the kind of stock I'd want to own in this type of environment. But when you see something take out its 2020 lows, let me just reset this. Then it gets attractive value-wise. But okay, that'll do. Those other lines, they won't come into the picture unless we're really flushing, so I can leave them. But that's it for Disney. This one I can see really testing its lows, and also the issues they've got with the Santos in Florida, which they deserve, let's be honest, could send them back to their lows. People will probably go into other stocks. Why own Disney when you could own Netflix that doesn't have that, for example, or Google. Meta, another one that I closed way too early. I was in at the lows. I've forgotten where. I'm sure I posted. I think I bought 100 and then 90. I went in twice, and then I closed at 115.5. That I remember. And then it just went all the way up. But that's what happens, and I totally don't care. I'm over that period. That I used to care about that. How much money I could have made was more annoying than money that I'd lost. But that's just immaturity, to be honest. It's Because if you're making money, that's it. If you make money consistently, you don't care about how much you could have made. This descending never came into play here, but it still counts. I'll put the absolute low in. Here we have a gap fill that will count. And you can see this support here. Look at this, how many times it hit that and then flush below and then acted as resistance. That's a very clear trend line for me, very clear. The old high counts, because once you've got to take that out before you can run smoothly. And where would you run if you take that out? You'd probably hit your head on this ceiling, which will probably coincide with one of these highs. I don't think we're going to get all the way up here, so I'm not going to draw a line higher than here. Yeah, it's probably the descending that will come into play. On the way down, close this gap, which we might do like next week, actually. If we have a down week, we close the gap. And then actually I can see the ascending line acting slight, could be important. And if we lose that, then we're going to test the old ranges down here. Last line, if we hit this, we bounce, we break this, we'll come lower. I don't know, probably bottom of this area. By then I'd be looking at the Nasdaq and other stocks will be going down too, because Meta should be pretty strong after good earnings. So I don't want to draw too many lines down here. Paramount, this is one I also used to own. I closed it at 19.89 or something, and then it kept going. But to be honest, all these stocks kept going because I closed most of them when I thought the market was at a high, and it kept on going. There was only Tesla, which is next, which I did close quite well. I mean, near its high, but it's still gone higher than when I closed it. Paramount, this is one I do actually want to own because actually it came crashing down before the bear market. And of course, it went low with the bear market. This trading range, I did quite well. And basically, I was able to move my average down because I was in after this crash. And then I was in the red, but then I traded quite well here. And then I kind of got rid of most of it. And then it kept on going low. And I traded it in the 20 range. And I was basically out, having made money overall just before 20. And now, we went higher, which is slightly annoying because I was actually in it for a while. But again, I don't care. If I made money, then if you made money in a stock which was down before the bear market, then that's fair enough. All right, I'll just the descending lines. Let me see. Maybe this one. I think that's valid. The old high. That's valid. And then this high here. I'm not sure if this high here will come into play. Maybe. I'll just draw it. Oops. Don't see as really, this is still not straight. I don't see as, if we hit that, we're probably testing the descending. So after that, we're going probably this range here. And this one's come down a lot. So there's a lot of upside and it's a very good company, so that's why I'm drawing one or two trend lines above because it could actually get there. I think 39.40 is going to be a nice range also to sell. I think that'll do on the way up. On the way down, the ascending maybe. This will find support on the way down for sure. 20 was resistance, so it'll be support. You can see it here. This sort of zone. And if it loses this, it's probably not going to go there. It's probably going to go to the ascending. And then we test the all-time lows, essentially. So that'll do for Paramount. On the way down, and I mean, you've got this low here, the March 2020 low. I'll just draw that. No, it could test that. It could test that. But Paramount's been destroyed for a while, since this. I actually forgot what this was. I think this was some Chinese related. I'm not actually sure what it was, but I remember buying after that. And then you've got the absolute lows down there. I'm not even going to draw that because $4, that's kind of unthinkable at the moment. So that's Paramount. And then Tesla. I'll end with Tesla. These lines I just drew, didn't I? I thought they were quite familiar, nice and thin. So let's draw the absolute low. I really don't, I guess it's possible. And the establishment don't like Elon Musk at the moment because he's allowing freedom on Twitter. Can't have that. So it's possible that it could have some strange selling come in, you know, some absolute wealthy coordinated attack. I thought about that. That's possible. So if it was to flush 100, I can't believe I'm talking about that right now when it's at 200. But I guess this zone here, look at this. This is ridiculous, the move it's had since the Corona low. So look, the high, the resistance here, and then it bounced there. Let's call it 63-ish. It wouldn't matter if we're getting down there, if whether you buy at 68 or 60, it's the same thing. I'm just going to say 61, 62, and then the low of 23. So let me draw that in now. Although you probably find support here. 90, right? A bounce, a flush of 100, everyone gets stopped out, bounces at 90, comes back up. So I'll just draw that just so it's there before I forget. But otherwise, this zone here, I don't have to be too precise because if we're there, it's going to be panic buying, I reckon. And then the absolute low in case something strange happens. Now, for those that hold Tesla, probably hate me putting these in. I'm just putting them in so that it's done. They'll probably be out of the picture most of the time anyway, because we'll never flush 100 at least for a long time. On the way up, now for me, you know, I sold this at 187, I think. So why would I have done that? I think this zone here, this sort of zone here, does it still count? No, it doesn't. I'm not going to put that in. So it used to count. That's why I sold it there, but it doesn't anymore. On the first of all, let's put the last high we put in around here. That's resistance. If we go higher, it's possible with Tesla. Still pretty. It's not exactly oversold. I mean, it is overbought, isn't it? It's just not terribly overbought compared to Apple. So if it does go higher, and it's a bit of a cold stock, so could find resistance there. Then after that, honestly, I'll leave it. There's this high here and the descending. On the way down, because now I really think this will come down, especially with the market when that rolls over. Is there an ascending line? Not really. It's too steep. Let me see if I go to the 15-minute chart. And if I was to draw the ascending, it's just, you know, imagine I have that. Imagine it comes down, it hits it straight away, but it's also going to be this horizontal line. And then we lose it and it's no longer applicable. And if I zoom out on the daily, it's just noise, you know, look at that. It's hard to read. So I don't think so. Once again, it's one of those situations where it's too steep for me. I think you'll have some very temporary horizontal support, just like in the general markets. If we lose this, maybe this zone, flushed, hit it. Also here, maybe this zone. I'm being very, very zoomed in here. Then the gap fill. This one I'll grant. I think that there is a small gap fill. And then after that, I'll leave it. That's it for Tesla. Very, very zoomed in and over the top maybe, but those are all the trend lines I would put in. Yeah, you could also say this one here, slight gap fill there maybe. Here, let's just completely overkill with the trend lines. That's it for me, Tesla. And of course, I'm bearish, so I think it will come back down. And I would love to buy Tesla. I don't really believe in Tesla, let's say, as a car company that's going to overtake all the market share, because it had a ridiculous market share up here, but it kept on going up. I remember being short Tesla actually, and somehow I got out of it in the black or in the green. I prefer to say in the green, but this was a short graveyard, you know, this whole move up here. So I wouldn't mind buying it down here. I think it has potential to have nice bounces like it did there. That'll do. Let me know if there is some other large caps you want me to cover. I did want to cover my small caps, but it'll make the video too long. So yeah, I just thought I'd do large caps for once. I'll try and do these small caps because some of them have potential for massive moves. Just one little, I'll give you this DWAC. This is a SPAC for Trump. Just destroyed, you know, weird chart. But last time I had this type of a breakout of the descending, which is about to do any second. Huge pump, massive move. You know, how much of a percentage move was this? This was you know, 60-70% in one day. And now you've got this sort of, you know, Trump visiting East Palestine or whatever in Ohio, and this starting to talk about him for the re-election campaign, and he's beating DeSantis. whatever. The point is, you could actually have a bit of a catalyst for a move up in DWAC. And here are the other ones that I wanted to cover, but I'll try and leave that for another video, and I'll try and do that later tonight. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments if you want me to cover something or something you didn't like or you did like, etc. Otherwise, happy Sunday. And actually tomorrow, Monday, markets close, so I could do that video then otherwise.